Hey, friends, welcome back to the Big Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Tricia Brouk, founder of the Big Talk Academy, award winning director, producer, and author. And this is episode 557. In today's episode, I am in conversation with the amazing Victoria Fenton. Victoria is a healing professional who has spent all of her adult life working within realms of coaching, medicine, healing arts, self awareness, and spiritual wisdom. She is the founder of the Aletheia Group and has a long-held reputation for achieving miraculous results with her clients. Her simple yet powerful approach places the heart at the center of healing and personal transformation. All right, everybody, let's do this with Victoria. Victoria, I am so excited to have you on the Big Talk podcast. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
It is my absolute honor and pleasure. I feel very fortunate because we've spent a lot of time together virtually, having conversations about the work that you do. You actually did my human design, and we're going to get into all of that. But I'm such a big fan of yours and all of the work that you do inside of this kind of health and mysticism and science container. And we're going to unpack all of that today for our listeners, which is super exciting. Before we do, however,
Mm.
can you take us back? Where in your life did this all come together in terms of your backstory and what brought you here today in this moment in time with us?
Well, it's a great question, and I will do my best to keep the story not epically long. But I actually got sick when I was 17 years old. And so I became very unwell in a very surprising kind of set of circumstances. I was very lucky in that my mum had already been exposed to the mysticism, the medicine that you speak of, energy medicine, all those sorts of things, human design as well. And it became my roadmap for resolution of my own issues. And in that, I thought it would be simple. And of course, it wasn't. And a many year journey took me through a whole variety of disciplines and investigation, all originally with an attempt to heal and help myself. And that over time led to me desiring to give that back in service to other people. And that, in a very, very brief nutshell, is kind of where all this came together for me.
That is a very brief nutshell. And so you have now devoted your life to helping people and helping people understand their wellness journey through your area of expertise.
Mm.
Can you connect that to the importance of using your voice and how you gave yourself permission to do that in service of others?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the relevant part of my history is that for many of those years of healing and trying to get better, I wasn't using my voice. I wasn't able to identify my own truths. I was in the medical establishment where I was given the truths of other people and told that they were the objective, complete capital T truth. And a big part of my story has been working out what was my truth and being able to stand up and say it and know that it didn't matter what other people thought about it or what opinions there were or whether it was even correct from the perspective of what everyone else needed my story to be. And to find my true storyline in that was work. And I think that a lot of what I do today is actually founded on the principle of allowing other people to own their own storyline in a way that makes their journey and doing it however they want to do it with the support of other people who are solely in endorsing their journey, not trying to paste an opinion or a journey on top of people.
When you think about identifying your own truths,
Mm.
what gave you the courage to do that?
Mm. It's
And
yeah, it's I mean, what gave me the courage was I had no choice.
mm,
It's a crazy situation that I've been blessed and cursed to experience, that my life wouldn't work without me embracing who I am. And so every time I've stepped away from my voice and my ability to speak up, I've witnessed the circumstances just not work. And that has been great in some ways. But it's really led me to really double down on knowing that I am enough, and my enoughness is all that I need. There is innate value in what I have to say and how I show up, and it isn't determined by even qualifications or certifications or, you know, ticky boxes that we all try and fit into or fill. And I think that the courage for me was a little bit forced on me, if I'm honest. It was like it was a little bit choiceless, but then you kind of step into it and go, okay, well, if this is the way that it's got to be, I'm showing up and I'm going to try my best. And I think the other thing that gives me more courage is humility, and just knowing that, me being humble and knowing that I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I'm kind of just making it up, and being honest about that is actually really refreshing for people to hear.
Yeah, for sure. I love the humility part. And I also love what you're saying about knowing who you are. And this is something that I think is so fascinating about your work and that I'd love for you to speak to. And I'm sort of
Mm,
connecting these dots. So you tell me if this is something that you can speak to, is your work in science and in health and in wellness and in mysticism and all of the traditional ways that we can identify and analyze who we are and how to best be in the world. Do you find when people come to you and they work with you, whether it's individually at the clinic or in the academy, that if they're suppressing their voice in some way, which is could be simply not being in their truth, not necessarily speaking, if they're suppressing their voice in some way, does that show up for them in health issues?
absolutely. And in every area, but yeah, you can see it in the body. Like there's a reality beneath all of our experience that is based on the nervous system. And if our nervous system is in a contracted, constricted, repressed space, impacts will happen. And it might not be in the minute or the moment, but it will certainly happen over years and decades, which is the amount of time we usually spend not following our voice and not speaking our truth. And I see it in so many ways, and in ways that people are starting to become aware of, but there is still the need to find a label or a diagnosis. So a big part of my attempts with my clients that see me or the coaches that I train is people before numbers or labels or diagnoses. There's a human being in this set of diagnoses or syndromes or whatever you want to call it. And usually it is an emergent thing from people not being in their power and not showing up and expressing from their truth and in their authentic voice. And I see it in digestive issues. Um, because if you can't stomach something, you can't stomach the way you're showing up in the world. If you can't, absorb and receive, there's a huge amount of digestive issues that can occur. I see it in immune conditions where people are being something that they are not supposed to be. And then there becomes this autoimmune self attack thing or a reactionism to everything else in the world, hypersensitivity syndromes, all of which come back to, are you truly being who you're here to be? And I love what you said about you don't necessarily need to be speaking it, but you emanate with everything that you do. And if you're not emanating from your frequency, then consequences happen.
Oh, I love this. If you can't stomach it, how are you going to
Mm.
digest? Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Let's talk about this frequency. And when you're working with people and you're using your voice in service of them, how do you get to that moment where you, first of all, identify that what they're struggling with and then move them into, well, it's more than that.
Mm. You're sort of like asking me the question of like the mental games I've been playing in my career for a very long time because I really struggled with the bait and switch type of approach. Like, oh, come to me for some great gut healing protocol of supplements, and oh, by the way, can we talk about your childhood trauma? Really didn't sit well with me. but
Right.
but what I worked out is that the way we use our voice, if we're going to be truly influential, needs to speak to the frequency that's there in front of us, even if we're trying to get it to resonate to something different. And so, meeting people where they're at is so important. And it isn't about layering in this critique of how they're showing up now. It's about really honoring that everything that we see in our clinics, in your work, in my work, is a compensation pattern. It's an adaptation pattern. So all of us not using our voice or not showing up fully isn't our fault. It isn't a problem of our making. It is usually a survival strategy, if not always a survival strategy. And keeping ourselves small is never going to be something that we volunteer to do because it's the best and easiest and healthiest thing. It's always going to be a last ditch attempt to stay safe and stay alive. And so a lot of my work is about developing compassion for the reasons the pretense is there in the first place, so that beneath the compassion we can unlock the shame, which is usually on top of the expression that comes from the soul. And so the movement through compassion, busting through those freezing, shameful sensations that we can't be who we are here to be, into that stepping into, well, can I tiptoe, can I just be a little bit more me today than I was yesterday, and taking it very slowly so that there's sustainability to the transformation.
Sustainability, the transformation is exactly right. And I also love that you're touching on the fact that people come to you thinking, and it's not a bait and switch, but they come to you thinking you're just going to give them advice about gut
Right.
health.
Yeah.
And then the reality is they probably maybe learn about what's going on and maybe never even thought there was a connection to shame or something else.
Mm.
And what a gift that you're giving people.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. It took me a lot to really own that there is a medical title that I can hold, and it gives people the wrong impression because it really does create a lack of sovereignty. It outsources authority to me as a medical professional or anybody else. And a big part of my work is reorienting sovereignty back into the self. And that doesn't come because I've told you what to do or how to behave. It does come because I've encouraged people into finding their own resources and finding their own ways through to finding themselves. It's not my job to tell anyone who they are or where their voice is or why they've hidden it. It's our job together to discover, what is underneath this, what was the reason potentially, and sometimes not even needing to know the reasons we hide, but just allowing ourselves to feel safe enough is often the missing ingredient. Do I feel safe enough to be me? And until we do, we're not going to do it. And so a lot of my work is just creating infrastructures of safety into which people can exhale, and from the exhalation comes the expression.
From the exhalation comes the expression.
Mm.
I keep quoting you back to yourself today. It's wonderful. Um, I want to touch on something that I think you could speak to very beautifully, Victoria. And
Mm.
I don't have the stats here right in front of me, but I'm told, or I did read this somewhere, that when people go to the doctor and get a physical,
Mhm.
they always underestimate the number of drinks they have every night, right? So if the person puts down 5, the doctor should assume it's 10, right? So when you think about clients who are coming to you for health and you're really trying to get them reoriented back to their sovereignty, how do you have that dance where they may not quite be ready to tell you the truth about everything in service of their own health? What does that look like for you as an influential voice?
Well, for instance, I don't do intake forms. So if people are going to lie to me on an intake form, why bother filling one in? And people do. It's the shame thing. I lie on intake forms when doctors ask me what I do on a weekend sometimes. I don't always do what I tell my clients to do. So I don't do intake forms. My intake process is a real safety pattern interrupt for everyone's nervous system. So it's time with me. It's a long time with me to have an intake process where I just make you feel as safe as I can get you to feel. And then people start to share with me and people start to be honest. And I'm always tracking nervous systems. And I think this is the thing that I do in my practice because of my training in trauma that a lot of doctors and medical professions don't train and don't do. And so when I'm witnessing somebody show up and how they're showing up, I'm tracking what I'm witnessing in their whole being, in their whole field, not just the words they're saying to me or the things they've written on a piece of paper. And in that way, it's not a witch hunt. I'm not here to go, hey, you're lying to me right now. It's just I'm taking nervous system notes in my own nervous system of what I'm witnessing in the human animal, the human being that is before me, I'm resonating with. And I'm also very interested in what I call constellational things. So constellational wellness. So it's as valuable to me to have information that has nothing to do with what you eat and drink, because if I can witness how you're showing up in your relationships or your career or with your children, or whether you go to yoga or whatever, all of those things inform me your self-perception. And so much of the work that we need to do in healthcare is about our core beliefs and about the way we perceive our identities in the world. And there's signatures everywhere. So I don't tend to just focus on like, tell me about the things you do to eat and drink. And the amount of times in my career I've had people in my clinic go, I ate all of the bread yesterday because I knew you were going to ban me from gluten. And I'm like, okay. Just the amount of times it's happened is insane. But people have that relationship with medicine, what they see as their health journey. And so everything that I do when clients come to me, especially for my bigger concierge containers where I am really like passing out every element of their world, is designed as a pattern interrupt. So I'm surprising them from the very beginning because I don't want them to relate to me as another healthcare professional, because they will lie. Because there's this authority thing, this white coat syndrome, shaming kind of, you're bad, I have all the answers, I'm going to hold your health hostage in my hand thing that happens in medicine. And I kind of see everything that I do as to disrupt that as a system in entirety.
I'm so grateful that you're doing this work.
Mm.
And this is the first time I've ever heard anyone say, Victoria, that healthcare is related to our core beliefs.
Mm.
I want everyone to hear that and to let that wash over them. Healthcare is related to our core beliefs. And as you say this and as you point this out, I'm thinking of certain people in my life who I can see now have core belief challenges, which is why they're having some health challenges.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so a pill, a diet, a therapist, it's not working because
Mm.
their core beliefs about their truth has not been touched on yet. And I think that's
Mm.
the magic of your work.
Mm. I appreciate you reflecting that back, because sometimes in this world we get so far down with the what we do and we just assume that we're doing something good. But there is, I witness it all the time. I witness it in myself, and I really try and make it clear that I have come from the realm of health challenges, and my health challenges have several different versions of my story. I have the supremely medical labeled one, which is very in the weeds of like science and biochemistry and genetic things. And it's an awesome story. It's the one I relied on for a very, very long time. And my health got worse and I struggled and I didn't really emerge out of the danger zone. And it was only when I actually acknowledged that my health journey had all of those physical elements, but it also had my spiritual conflicts that were showing up through my physiology, my emotional patterns that were showing up through my body and its struggles, and especially those core beliefs of, am I worthy? What am I here for? Am I valuable? Am I enough? But also, identification with a label becomes a core belief over time. And so I had to do so much of that work to actually go, do you know what? That's a safe story because the world believes it, but it's not a true story. Therefore, it's safe for some part of me, but it's not a truly safe story that I get to inhabit. And it wasn't until I really went, do you know what? My core beliefs are flawed and I need to work out where they came from. And for everyone listening, core beliefs are usually pre and perinatal trauma. Like this is pre-conscious, and they just get embedded and layered on over time, and our experience reinforces them. But it wasn't until I was brave enough to speak to your word earlier, had the courage to go, do you know what? I'm going to let go of the story that I think is protecting me from the world. And I'm going to be really honest, even if it's ugly, even if I lose my career, I'm going to be really honest about the fact that there was more in my illness journey than just bad luck, circumstances, and genetics. There was deep seated beliefs and pain that needed to come out. And they came out in my body through an illness because it was the only way that they could at the time.
How do you support your community clients, patients with the detoxing of this?
Mm. The foundation I have found has to be, you have to feel safe enough to to start to let go of the layers, because they are protective. So a lot of my work is building connections for clients with people and communities and places where they feel like they can just let one layer of the onion go, or whatever analogy you want to use, one brick on the barrier put down. So safety is a foundation. But the two other pillars that I hold when I'm dealing with anyone in whatever I'm doing, one of them is real belief in them. Because if they have a core belief that they're not valuable, it doesn't matter what the core belief is, the only way I can meet them in a way that truly empowers them without saying any words is just to meet them every time with an absolute belief in them, in their incarnation, in their power, in their worth, in everything. And at that point, I'm just vibrating as much as I can how much I believe in them. And I have a phrase, borrow my belief until it's part of your core. And that's one way in which I can support people. And the other thing is that I infuse everything I do with love. Like, I love that you have big love and you use love all the time. But love is the biggest medicine that we have. And it's totally devoid in healthcare. Healthcare is totally devoid of love. It's just machinery and insurance and paper and syndromes and diagnoses and anything that gets money. Where's the love? And so if I'm with anyone, my students, my patients, in my personal life, I don't really have a divide. This is just how I show up. It's like, return non-love with love. Every time I see someone suffering, even if that suffering or pain is being projected onto me, even if I had part in creating that dynamic, how can I metabolize that energy and create love out of it? How can I use those ingredients to create the fire of love and return that as a frequency? Because from there, anything can happen.
Anything can happen. And I love that you're talking about this. And I have this visual of you collecting the scientific data of the exchange of energy that you have with all of your patients and
Mm-hmm.
clients, and the possibility of you literally just sitting and being in their presence, and the healing journey begins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's we're getting there with some of the proof, if you like. There's been a lot of work done for people just to try and scientifically prove things that anyone who's been in the experience would believe anyway.
Right.
And I don't mind if we have to play the game of the randomized control trial or whatever it is, but people are starting to realize that experimentation and experiential medicine is as important as the proven science. We're moving into a new frontier. And I do track all of this stuff. And I have the proof of, I do gut biome tests on certain clients, and I do nothing in terms of supplemental treatment. And I have two completely different gut biomes. That's evidence that what was safe in their ecosystem when they began work in this way is an entirely different thing when we finish work. 6 months later, an entirely different ecosystem is able to take up habitation in their being because they have changed. And it's remarkable. Like I surprise myself every time. It's like, oh, I didn't give you an antimicrobial treatment or like give you anything. We just talked. And gradually and slowly you found the ability to come more into your body, because that's the key as well that I really should impress upon your listeners. Every time we are not being ourselves, not using our voice, not showing up, we're not really in our bodies. We're not inhabiting our skin. We might sort of be slightly there, but we're also slightly not. And so everything about trauma and protectionism takes us out of the current moment of reality. And everything that I'm doing is like, hey, come back. Like, it's not go there, it's come home. It's come back to where you began. Because this, despite all the things that your nervous system once believed, this form is the absolute safest place for you in your incarnation right now in this moment. And that shouldn't be work. But for some reason, because of the way this universe is set up, it becomes work. But it's our joy to return home to being us.
And you're setting up a universe in which our body is our home safe place, and it can be healthy and it can be vital and vibrant. And that is so fantastic.
Yeah, I use the word vitality a lot. Actually, it's the flow. We all know what we're talking about. It's this kind of like, oh, that was easy. That didn't feel like it was effortful. Life shouldn't be effortful, right? It shouldn't feel like we're climbing a mountain. Sometimes challenging, but not we're climbing a mountain with a 50-pound weight vest on our back. Just we're doing this undulation through the landscape that is life.
Yeah. You have unveiled Academy
Mhm.
where you teach people how to practice what you have created. Talk a
Mm.
little bit about that for our listeners, Victoria.
It's my favorite thing that I've ever done. So there's a lot available within the Unveil Academy, but the flagship course is a year-long container for developing and training what I call holistic healing professionals, primarily coaches, but there's a lot of the health stuff in there as well. So people understand the nervous system as it applies to physiology and vice versa. And also all of the trauma education. It's a trauma informed training. So it really is allowing people to become these safe vessels of creating and holding the container for other people to find their safety. And we just wrapped today, on the day of our recording, we just wrapped my first year of education, and there were tears and there was joy, and to witness the progression in what I've created that started as an idea. I'm sure we all do this as entrepreneurs, this idea that sounds like a really good thing, and then suddenly you witness actual humans changing beyond belief in your containers and finding links with each other. And the beauty of community is something that I really hold dear within all of the things that I do, but especially within the Unveil Academy. And so we do have courses for people to do a standalone if they're already coaches and just want to add things on. But we launch every September with a cohort of students to walk with me through a year of this training. And it's the most fun, the most transformation I personally have in my work life. But it is, as you say, it's empowering individuals to do this in the way that I do. And it's a privilege that I get to teach and train. It really is.
Oh, what a gift for these students. I will, of course, put all of these links in the show notes so that you can join Victoria in September. I have loved this conversation. I always love talking with you. It's such a gift and
Mm.
a privilege and honor to be in your presence.
Oh, thank
And
you.
oh, my pleasure. I would love to also share that because you've done my human design, I feel
Mm.
like, it's a very intimate container that you and I have engaged in because you know everything about me. And
Yeah.
so I feel very grateful that you are sharing everything about you with us and our listeners today.
Oh, thank you, Trisha. I appreciate that so much.
My pleasure. Are you ready for some fast talk?
I am, yes.
Okay. What's your favorite book?
Oh, it's actually the Gene Keys book. And I know that isn't really like a novel or anything like that, but it is the Gene Keys book, which in details all of the Gene Keys.
Amazing. That's actually on my list to get. So I love that you said that. Who is your favorite speaker and why?
I'm going to have to go with Brene Brown. I think she has changed our industry, and I think she's done a lot for us. And I think that she's really empowering.
Amazing. How do you memorize?
I'm really lucky. I'm sorry, there's no trick. I just have a memory of an elephant, and I'm a bit synesthetic, so I tie things together. So there's like memory palaces and storylines, and I remember where I was when I hear things, and that's how I tie my brain together.
Amazing. And what do you do the day before you speak?
Oh, self care, self care, self care, self care, self care. Sleep, lots of hydration. Take space. Follow my body's cues. Like if I want to go for a walk, go for a walk. If I want to sit and watch, just whatever this system needs that day, because every speaking event is different.
For sure. And what podcast are you currently obsessed with?
Oh, I'm always obsessed with Tim Ferriss. He's always my favorite, but I'm also super obsessed with both Smartless and Just Jack and Will comedy stuff. I need to laugh and not make my podcast also my educational realm. So
Yes.
those two.
I too devour Smartless.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for being a featured guest today, Victoria. I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
so much. We're going to put all the links to your everything in the show notes. But where can our listeners get in touch with you if they want to?
Best way is on Instagram. I'm always on Instagram. I'm Victoria L. Fenton on Instagram. Just DM me. I'm always available there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody, for dropping in with us today. If this show resonated with you, be sure to share it with your friends, rate and review. Let me know on Instagram how this show resonated. Be sure to follow Victoria. And if you're watching on YouTube, also hit that notification bell so that you get all of our latest episodes. I appreciate you all so much. And remember, your voice matters. Big love.